deserve to have the best physical, mental, spiritual. Zealous Wellness with Mike Hollis.
Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Zealous Wellness with Mike Hollis. I'm your host. Great day of football yesterday. If you guys watched some of those sporting events, we had an eventual blizzard in Denver, which I've lived through one of those before as well. I was telling my buddies we were watching the game, and I said, "Man, I played there one time years ago, and before the game, it was like maybe in the mid 50s or so, but it was sunny, nice weather, it was beautiful weather in Denver." And we go into, and I can't remember what month it was of the year, but we go into the locker room prior to the kickoff, of course, getting all pumped up, ready to go. We come outside and it's snowing, like out of nowhere. I'm like, wow, they're not kidding about this Denver weather. It just, out of nowhere it'll start snowing because they're so high up in the altitude and so forth. But super cool stuff. But yeah, great games yesterday. I say my Seahawks because that's my only team that I'd be rooting for at this point. I had the Jaguars until my Bills. Weird, right? My Bills, because I played for them for a year, but my Jaguars, I'm loyal to my Jaguars, but obviously been here for so long and still retired here, of course. But, they played the Bills and the Jaguars lost, of course. So the Bills go on. So, okay, my Bills are my team, right? Okay, well, they lose. So now I'm like, okay, well, I guess Seattle is the only team because I grew up in the Northwest. I grew up in Spokane, Washington, which is on the eastern side of Washington State. And obviously Seattle's on the western side. I was just a fan, back then, but they, Seahawks were not very good back then. So I kind of had to, pick and choose who I watched. A lot of the Cowboys for whatever reason. They were always on TV, which they still are always on TV. But the Seahawks were always on TV as well because of where I grew up. But super cool games yesterday. And I think, obviously with the Super Bowl happening in a couple weeks, I'm rooting for my Seahawks. Hopefully they'll pull it through, and they're playing really well, very well. I don't know if you guys saw some of those plays that they made, but just the intensity was there. They want it bad. I can tell. Everyone's playing hard, and that's really the thing that is common amongst winning teams in the NFL like that. Is they're really, really consistently, pushing hard and really showing that they want to win. Clearly, you get that close to the Super Bowl, there's no other choice. So we have to win this. Everyone's each team is really striving to win the game, of course, and everyone's got to be on their A game that specific day. But it is a distraction. There's a lot of things that happen during that week, and a lot of weird stuff that takes you off your game, and so you got to stay focused. I've never been played in a Super Bowl. I've been to like 4 as a spectator, of course, but never been there as a player. Came one game away from the Super Bowl twice. 2 AFC championship games we lost. It was both with the Jaguars. So anyways, I'm going to talk about my story, and it has a lot to do with, being very persistent and relentless and just never giving up, making a commitment. Passion. It has everything to do with all the stuff I've always talked about. And it's just my real life sort of story and just why, the things I went through and why it was so important for me to make people understand that I was good enough to play for them. Now I'm talking different levels. I'm not talking about the NFL. I will definitely, with my story does include the NFL clearly, but that was the road to getting to the NFL was incredibly difficult. And again, I've told you guys this in the past. NFL was not my goal. I was just trying to be as good as I could be. But, today we're going to talk a lot about the mentality that it takes and take what I say today and use it in your everyday life, whatever it is you're doing. Because again, it works all around. It works in any skill or any sort of career that you have. That you have passion in and you have a commitment to and you're relentless in. Those are the kind of things that we'll be talking about today. But first, we'll get a quick word from our sponsor. When we get back, we'll dive right into my road to my NFL career.
At 3, we want to give you the true health benefits that you're paying for, something you can feel and see a difference quickly. Each product is packed with powerful plant-based nutrients that are combined through a proprietary curation process and then infused with innovative cellular absorption technologies to ensure the nutrients absorb into the cells for maximum wellness. The quality and effectiveness of our life-changing products is evident by their approval to be included in the well-known Prescriber's Digital Reference, or PDR. PDR has been a valuable resource to the medical doctors and providers in the healthcare community for decades. Our products are GMO-free, clinically studied, and third-party tested, all designed to support health and proactive wellness for everyone.
And welcome back. So we'll dive right into it. And some of the things that that people are put under pressure on certain things within their lives. There's a lot of expectations, and you challenge yourself. And if you don't believe that you are competitive within your own self, within your own mind, I think you're foolish. I think we are all competitive. Okay. And so, when it comes down to, something that you're very passionate about and you enjoy and you're very, persistent with, and, when you have someone say, I've had friends, I've had people say, man, you're just, I don't think you're cut out for this, and a lot of like negative Nellies out there that were kind of like saying, I know you love kicking, but it's these are the big leagues, or some that only the incredible athletes and big, strong, freakishly athletic guys get to. So enjoy your road as long as it lasts, kind of thing. Clearly, I was chuckle under my breath when people say something like that, because I know my abilities, and my size didn't really matter, and that's a lot of what I'm about to talk about tonight, because I had to jump through jump over a lot of hurdles and through a lot of hoops and everything just to get myself in a position to have an opportunity to play. And of course, I did that. But my point is, looking back, just even going through high school. So my story really kind of starts out with, I grew up playing soccer in Spokane, Washington. Again, I don't want to bore you guys, but the things I'm going to tell you are pretty important, because you're going to find out. I can scratch down every time I come up with something that was like a letdown or like a hurdle that I had to jump over. There's probably going to be 20 or 30 of them within this whole story, of course. So bringing myself back all the way back to high school and growing up playing soccer, going into high school. And feel free for you guys watching live on LinkedIn, I believe, you can, interject and ask some questions. I'll definitely answer some questions today, because there might be some, of course. But with regards to my road, even leading into being a kicker, why was I? Well, I played soccer, and I had kind of a strong leg back in the day, and I was always chosen to do the penalty shots for the most part. And I played soccer starting at maybe 12 years old, 11 years old, something like that. All the way up through high school. But when I got into high school, I was not the fastest guy. I was pretty athletic, but I barely made varsity, right? I was never, I was a starter eventually towards my senior year in high school. But with regards to my passion for kicking, it started with soccer. And so when I was in, like, we'll say, the 8th grade really is when I started playing organized football. So for real. Like, other than just playing with my neighborhood friends, I played for what we called junior high school back in the day. It was middle school essentially, but our junior high schools were 7th grade, 8th grade, and 9th grade. So those 3 grades, even though 9th grade is high school, we were still in the junior high setting, right? Well, in 7th and 8th grade, I don't know why I didn't play football my 7th grade year. I don't even think I was interested in football at the time, but got more interested and thought, well, I could play, and realized, I guess, that at the school I was at, we had so many football players in 7th and 8th and 9th grade, but the 9th grade had its own little. They were at their own level, right? Well, because it was high school essentially, but 7th and 8th grade, they actually divided up into lightweight and heavyweight. Clearly, I was a small guy, so lightweight was the team I was on. So I felt comfortable playing with the guys that were similar to my size. I wasn't going to get killed, So I was a kicker, I was a punter, I was a DB, and I was a wide receiver, right? And we were terrible. And I literally made a 34-yard field goal, I think, in 8th grade, and I think that might have been my only field goal attempt. We didn't score much at all. I think we, like that last game we played, we won. I kicked a field goal and I think we scored a touchdown. I think we won by, and of course the extra point, whatever. Anyways, long story short, going up through high school, getting into high school. So going into high school, I had a stepbrother that asked me prior to going into high school. He had just graduated a couple years prior to me going into the high school that we both went to, of course. But he had asked me if I was going to play, football at Central Valley High School in Spokane, Washington. Right? I'm like, man, I get to high school, those guys, it's a free for all. I didn't play ninth grade. I did not play in ninth grade because I figured I was going to get killed. And here's my ultimate reasoning behind it was that I thought that I had to play other positions. I thought that I couldn't be just a kicker on the team. I thought, well, I have to play other positions. I can't just do that. Well, I was wrong. So my brother, going back to my brother, had said, hey, are you going to play football? I said, no, man, I'm going to get killed out there. He said, what, why don't you just be a kicker? You enjoy that, right? I'm like, oh, I do, but I can't do that. I have to play other positions, don't I? He goes, no. There's a guy that graduated the same year I did that was just a kicker on the team. I'm like, that's crazy. Okay, so that was kind of an eye opener. And honestly, I'll be flat out honest with you. I don't even know where I'd be right now today had my brother not even, told me that. Maybe I'd have figured it out, but I just at that point I took a chance. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna walk on. So I go to the high school. Nobody has a clue who I am, right? So, I had a funny, short, like little guy nickname back in the day in high school. I won't repeat it, but it was funny because I was such a shrimp, and I was just such a small guy, but I was able to kick a football. And so I literally made varsity my first year, my sophomore year in high school. And so going through high school, we were, again, not on a very good team, 3 years of high school football. At the end of that, so my senior year, I had two 50-yard field goals. I made two field goals over 50 yards, right at 50, essentially. I was competing against, I'd say I was competing against, but there was another guy in our league in Spokane, who, if you remember the name Jason Hansen, he played for the Detroit Lions for like 20-something years, 21 years, something like that. Drafted by the Lions, stayed with the Lions for his whole career, which is unheard of. But Jason was a legend in the NFL, and he was 2 years older than me. I played against him in high school in soccer and football. And then I also played against his younger brother, Travis Hansen, who was my age, right? So we were both kickers and punters and soccer players, of course. So going into my senior year, I was chosen as the all league, I was all Greater Spokane League, all GSL. I was the first team, and Travis Hansen was second team, right? So Travis is Jason Hansen's brother. Jason had gone on to Washington State University, and he instantly became a legend down there, right? So everyone knew who Jason Hansen was. Everyone knew who Travis Hansen was, being Jason's brother. Nobody really knew who I was. Like, who's this guy? He's such a small guy. He's a little shrimp. So when I get to the point of college recruiting, I mean, I'm good. I have my kicking coach, Jim Gaetano is my guy. I've mentioned him before. And, he taught me some things. It wasn't nearly as detailed as it was after the fact. I'll get to that point in a minute. But when it came time to recruiting and kind of like, hey, where do you want to, let's look at some schools, let's send some VHS tape out. I'm dating myself, telling you how old I am really, but we were sending VHS tapes out to colleges that, I thought maybe I could go to. But again, you're looking at the roster and he's got this all-American kicker and like, I can't go there because, so all these colleges, I don't know, maybe it was 20 or so colleges I sent some videos out to and didn't really get much response, some colleges would say, we got walk on, and back then they didn't have a preferred walk on. So walk on was a little bit easier. But you had to commit to the team and commit to the school, pay the tuition, all that stuff before you could even have a chance to walk on. And I just wasn't really ready for that. And the other thing too is I was really wanting I wanted someone to want me. I wanted to earn a scholarship. That was a big deal for me. I didn't want my parents paying for my college. I wanted to be the guy that earned his own tuition. I wanted that scholarship. So fast forwarding to the time when I had to make a decision because no teams, were very interested. They'd sent some letters back, hey, here's, fill out this information. And I knew the minute I put my height and weight in there, they'd be like, they'd laugh and, we're done with this guy. And that's kind of what happened essentially. Might not be true. I don't know, but I didn't hear back from a lot of those teams after I filled out the little questionnaire and sent it back to them. And fast forward again to the time when it came, hey, I need to go to a college, and I got some interest from some community colleges. Wenatchee Valley College was one of them. Walla Walla Community College. If you guys are Drew Bledsoe fans, you know that he's from Walla Walla, Washington. So I did a recruiting trip down there, drove my Camaro in the snow, which I can't believe my parents let me go. It was like a 3-hour drive or more even. And it was a blizzard, and I made it, of course, but wasn't a real big fan of Walla Walla. So I went to Wenatchee for the same kind of recruiting trip. Loved Wenatchee. I'm like, okay, cool. I got a scholarship. Junior college scholarship is just peanuts. A little bit of tuition, a little bit of help on your books, and no room and board. So I was kind of on my own with that. Parents, of course, chipped in a lot, anyways. But so I go to 2 years at Wenatchee Valley College. Love the experience, and actually, in all reality, I played on the very last team they ever had. They closed down the program there. The last year I was there, 1992 was the year, I guess. That I was there, 2 years, of course, 91, 92. And at the time, of course, I was a blue chip All-American my freshman year at Wenatchee. And in my sophomore year, I wasn't All-American, but I was still pretty good. I had a decent season, not as good as the first year. But again, so I finished my junior college career, and here I am sitting in the same boat I was 2 years prior to that. Okay, I'm like, man, this is not fun. I'm reaching out to the same colleges I did before, looking at the kickers they have now. Some of them, found some All-American kickers, okay. So I'm like, okay, great. I'm back in the same boat I was when I left high school, of course. And then my grandmother had passed away. So we drove down to Lewiston, Idaho for her funeral. And on my way back, I had contacted Washington State University. And I thought, well, it might be a school I might be able to go to. The problem with Washington State University was their coach was a guy by the name of Mike Price, and their kicker was a kid by the name of Aaron Price. Okay, that was coach's son. I'm like, okay, clearly I'm not going to have an opportunity here, but maybe when he's done, maybe he had a year or two older than me. I thought, well, maybe I'll just go and see the campus. So I coordinated an unofficial visit to Washington State University through somebody, I don't remember who, but coming back from Lewiston, I stopped in Pullman, Washington for a unofficial, recruiting visit. Well, I walked in the office and lo and behold, the secretary said, well, we don't have your name on the list. I can't do anything for you. We don't have anybody to show you around. I'm sorry. I'm like, okay, well, you're lost, So I literally packed my bags and, not really packed my bags, got my stuff and went, elsewhere, went home basically. So at that point, I'm like, okay, so there's a lot of, teams that may have expressed an interest. And so again, I'm just really, really struggling, trying to find a team, trying to find a home, and finally, after a while, John L. Smith from the University of Idaho reaches out to me, and I'd talked to them prior to that, but they had a guy by Thane Doyle. I can't believe I remember that name. He was a kicker at University of Idaho. He was a Vandal and had just graduated, I think, the year prior to me looking to go to Idaho. And John L. Smith called me out of the blue. He said, hey, man, we had recruited this guy from Michigan State. He hasn't turned out to be the guy we thought he was going to be as far as our kicker. I want to offer you an opportunity to come into the University of Idaho, compete with this guy, and winner gets the scholarship. We have a full ride waiting for either one of you two. Whoever wins the job will get the scholarship. And so after, talking to Montana, it's cold there. Again, I'm being a big baby, of course, but Montana was offering some scholarship money, but not a full ride. So I eventually told John L. Smith, yes, I'll take your offer. I enrolled in Idaho, went through their camp, went through football during the season, of course, and won the job. And I was their kicker. Well, obviously, a long story short, history there. I, was a kicker for the Vandals for 2 years. Okay, so I went 2 years junior college, 2 years at 1AA, which is FCS now. So it's Division I football, but lower than FBS, right? So I'm playing for a very powerful team, by the way. Doug Nussmeier, if you remember that name, he was our quarterback. He is now a coach at, I believe, Dallas Cowboys. I think he's like a tight ends coach now or something there. I can't remember where he's at. I think he might be somewhere else now. He's bounced around quite a bit. He was offense coordinator for Florida for a while, and also where else? Fresno State is where he kind of started his coaching career. But he's done a lot. He was drafted by the Saints. But anyways, long story short, he was a great quarterback. We had a lot of high-powered offensive plays. We were, the West Coast offense. We're throwing the ball all kinds of distance and scoring all kinds of points I had my senior year, I had 68 extra points in a row. I was 100% on extra points my senior year. I had 94 in a row between the 2 years. So anyways, the reason I bring up those players, Jeff Robinson was a tight end and a long snapper who was played for the Broncos for a while. He was our long snapper at Idaho. And so we had scouts to come in and look at these guys, right? So we had a number of players. Doug Nussmeier was the bigger one my senior year. And so when scouts would come in and watch these guys or ask around or whatever, John L. Smith did a very good job of saying, hey, because these scouts come in and they say, hey, who do you got? Like, am I missing anybody on your team that you think is, worthy of given a look? And of course, John L. liked me and he said, yeah, this guy, Mike Hollis, I think he's a good kicker. I think you should take a look at him. So I had a couple opportunities to work out for some teams while, they came there for the attention of Doug Nussmeier. I was able to kind of take advantage of that. And there's another story too, when I fast forward and get into after I had a sniff in the NFL, my first team. I'll share that with you as well. But it's you have to be a little creative when it comes to expressing, an opportunity to be in front of people you want to show your skills to. And I was very creative. When I get to that point, you'll understand what I'm saying. But with regards to Idaho, having the opportunity to play for Idaho, getting some attention, I worked out for the Vikings came to watch me kick. The Atlanta Falcons came to watch me kick. So when the NFL draft came, I knew I wasn't getting drafted in the NFL. So I'm like, you know what, this is fine. I know that I'm a small guy from a small school. I don't have any interest. I have no leverage. Clearly, I'm just a small guy. Whatever. I was a good kicker. I was, a decent year. Decent couple years at Idaho. I had a lot of long field goals and long field goal attempts. So I missed a lot of those. My field goal percentage wasn't that great, but I did have a pretty strong leg, and so I think that got some attention from a lot of scouts. So I worked out for those teams. The Giants, I believe, was another one that came in to take a look at me. When it came to the draft, I wasn't drafted. After the end of the draft, like Sunday evening, maybe Monday even, I got a call from John L. Smith. And again, John L. Smith did a lot for me. He got, I didn't have an agent at the time. I don't think I got him. Maybe I did. Guy's name was Ken Stanager. He represented Mark Rippon. He's also from Spokane as well. So I went with Ken Stanager. I was kind of pleasantly surprised that he wanted to represent me. So at the time, I'm getting these calls from John L. Smith, not my agents, because these scouts are reaching out to John L. Smith, and get to a position where, these teams wanted to work me out. So the Falcons said, man, we want to fly Mike out and have him work out. Great. Wonderful. Awesome. That's so cool. First time I've been on the East Coast. So I take a flight out to Atlanta and work out against 5 out of the 4 other guys. Todd Peterson was one of the guys that was working out that same day as well. So it was 5 kickers one day in Atlanta, and I did okay. I didn't do the best. Todd Peterson did the best, and I congratulated him. He won the job, so he was the one that was that they picked up in the for the preseason. Of course, they had Norm Johnson as their kicker, which Norm and I are friends now. It's the first time I've met him back then, of course, but we've gotten to know each other a little bit better since then. But my point is that I didn't make the team, so I flew back. Then the very next week, John L. Smith calls me again and says, hey, the San Diego Chargers want to take a look at you. They're going to fly you in and have you compete. I'm like, okay, awesome. San Diego's on the West Coast. Perfect. Great. I go down there, compete against one other guy, and I did the best out of the two. And a funny story, because, they call you in the office after you work out, and Bobby Beathard is the guy's name. He says, Mike, how do you think you did today? I said, man, I did good. I'm dealing with a little bit of a cold, but I think I could do a little bit better. But, overall, I think I did a good job. And he goes, you know what? We think so too. Oh, okay, cool. And he goes, well, there's a problem. I said, okay, what's that? He says, well, we don't have any money. And I'm like, and no big deal. I mean, hey, this is the NFL. I don't care if I'm getting, when you understand what I mean when he said I have no money, what he meant was, we don't have any money for a signing bonus. And after he explained that, I'm just like laughing. I'm like, that is ridiculous. I wasn't expecting even a bonus at all. Like just an NFL contract would be amazing just to get the experience to learn from these guys. And I know I'm going to be a camp guy because John Carney was their kicker at the time. And he had 4 or 5 years of awesomeness there as a Charger. And of course, he turned out to be an incredible legend, a great guy, by the way, as well. So I spent, I got signed me. I spent the training camp there in 1994 with the San Diego Chargers. Now, we had 5 preseason games that year. I made 3 of them. They released me after the 3rd game. I got into 1 game against the Houston Oilers. Again, I'm dating myself. Houston Oilers in the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, which was kind of cool. And I got a field goal there and a kickoff. That's all I really got in the preseason of San Diego. So, but I got on film. I got film. I got film. I got, teams can know that I hit the ball pretty well. Kickoff wasn't great, but my field goal was really good. And so I'm leaving San Diego. They released me. I actually stayed a little bit longer because I liked the guys so much. I said, "Hey, do you mind if I just stay in the hotel for a little bit longer?" Yeah, sure. No, a few days, no problem. So that was great. So fast forward now. When I left San Diego, going back to school, I had maybe a handful of classes to take and then an internship before I was going to graduate. Right. Well, long story short, we get I go back to school, and Bobby Beathard, the general manager for the Chargers, and Ken Staninger, my agent at the time, both said to me, "Mike, don't enroll in classes. We have this new, it's rebranded NFL Europe sort of. It was World League. It was called the World League. It's coming up, and they're doing this draft. And we're gonna enter you in the draft, and you don't take any classes at Idaho this semester because you'll get drafted. We have no doubt in our minds that you're going to get drafted. We put good word in for you. You'll get drafted." Well, as you can imagine, that day, I think it was just a 1-day draft type of thing. That day came and went, and guess who did not get drafted? This guy, right? So I did not get drafted. So here I am. I'm taking a little bike ride down to my sister's house, just kind of rethinking myself, like, what in the heck is going on? This is ridiculous. Now, that was a huge blow because I spent the training camp with the Chargers. I'm thinking, man, I'm going to get an opportunity to play, in Europe. This is great, and that didn't happen. However, it was a blessing in disguise because what happened was I was able to go back to Idaho, of course, and train there, keep kicking in the dome, and I had all kinds of great things that enrolled in some classes, of course, because I wasn't drafted. And so the other thing, going back to my story about working out with having teams come in to see other players, well, I had a guy by the name of Eddie Howard, he's a good friend of mine. His apartment was right next door to ours. I actually, wink, wink, I cut a hole in the wall there and fed him free cable. Don't tell anybody, though. I did that way back in the day. Anyways, Eddie was a good punter, really good punter. And my coach actually worked with Eddie and got him, pretty good. So Eddie was getting a lot of attention from some certain teams that came through, right? Well, I told Eddie, I said, listen, if there's ever an opportunity where, I know you're going to get some looks. So when those teams come in, let me know what day and what time they're going to look at you. And I'm going to be on the other end of the field kicking while you're doing your workout. Lo and behold, the Jaguars were interested in Eddie, and they came out to look at Eddie. And I was, of course, on the other end of the field, and we were in the dome, which is, usually they're outside, but I don't know what the weather, what the deal was, but we were inside. I was obviously, conscious of where he's doing his workout. I want to be his way. And so when he was kind of, I was kicking, of course, when I could, and of course in the dome, and there's nobody in there, it echoes and boom, hitting the ball really solid. After that, after Eddie was done working out, I ran over and introduced myself to the scout. Rick Mueller was the guy's name. So he's a scout for the Jaguars. And I introduced him, told him who I was. I played for I got on with the Chargers last, preseason, got some film, not much, but definitely interested in getting a look if you guys are interested. And he goes, we got a couple guys now. We got Scott Sisson, who was a kicker that Patriots had drafted a couple years prior to that. And they thought he was, going to be their guy because he's a veteran. He's got a couple years experience, and, Georgia Tech guy, good dude as well. I'll get into that in a minute. So fast forward again, this is where it gets really tough because now I'm trying to get in the NFL, and, obviously the higher levels you get, the more, roadblocks you're going to run into and hurdles you're going to have to jump over. All these things I got to convince. Again, clearly you'll probably understand where I'm going with this. My size was a big deal, I guess. So here I am working out, trying to get, the Jaguars to even give me an opportunity to look at me like officially. And finally, they had the San Diego Chargers had called back and said, "Hey, Mike, I don't know where you stand, or if you got any teams interested in right now, but we want you to come back. We want to." And John Carney had gone to the Pro Bowl that year. If John was on this episode now, he would agree with me. He said, "Mike, you pushed," because he told me this. He literally told me this: "Is you pushed me in training camp and made me a better kicker. And as a result of that, I went to the Pro Bowl. Thank you for pushing me. I'm like, wow, that was an incredible statement. I felt really good about that. So, but my point is that, that they wanted me to come back. And I said, okay. I said, oh, Bobby, I'm talking to Bobby Beathard again. And I said, Bobby, hey, I've got an opportunity possibly with Jacksonville. They expressed some interest. I'm going to send them some tape here soon. If they ask, I got my agent on it, this and that. Will you give me some time? A couple weeks? Oh yeah, absolutely. Take your time, Mike. Just let us know what you want to do. Well, I sent the video to the Jaguars. They had called and requested some video. Week or two kind of came and went, and finally, I got to a position where I had to make a decision, and I kept talking to my agent almost on a daily basis, and he just kept giving me this runaround, like, well, they're not really calling me back. I'm not really sure. Finally, one day, I get a call from my agent, and he said, hey, listen, Tom Coughlin thinks you're great. Your form's good and everything, but he just wants a bigger kicker. So they're gonna close the door on this opportunity and look for a bigger kicker. I was like, you got to be kidding me. So I asked Bobby if I could I didn't immediately agree to going back to San Diego because when I told Jim, my coach at the time, when I told him that, he was furious. He was so mad. We didn't have cell phones back then. So we went to the nearest payphone after we got done working out, after I told him the news. And he said, he called up Jacksonville and he let him have it. He said, you guys have no idea what you're talking about. Mike kicks like he's 6'2". Why would it matter what size he is? He kicks, he's a kicker. Who cares? So finally, after, a good 2 or 3 or 4 days, finally talked them into giving me a workout because they'd worked out a bunch of guys and they still weren't happy with. All right. So I meet this guy, Rick Mueller, again, the same guy I saw in the Dome in Idaho. We drive over to Central Washington, somewhere in the Tri-Cities area, meet up with this guy. I have a really good workout. He sends the information back to the Jaguars, and they're, again, dragging their feet again. And finally, San Diego calls and I said, well, I'll have an answer for you by Sunday. I got to give you an answer. So literally Monday actually is what it was. And ultimately what happened was I didn't hear back from the Jaguars. Okay. And so I was sitting at dinner with my family one night, Sunday night, and I said, okay, hey guys, tomorrow I'm going to call San Diego and say, listen, I don't want to ruin an opportunity to get another, camp opportunity to get better. I'm going to sign with the Chargers. Okay. Monday morning calls, Monday morning comes, and guess who calls? Jacksonville. So talk about a godsend. This was something that it was just that the timing was impeccable. Right? I'm literally about to call the Chargers and my phone rings. It's the Jacksonville Jaguars saying they want to fly me in. Tom Coughlin wants to see you kick in real life. He wants to see what you look like. He wants to see you kick in person. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Cool. So, of course, I fly out to Jacksonville. I was the only guy they flew out, by the way. That was one thing to me, like, wow, this is something pretty cool, because if I'm the only guy that's here, if I perform well, I think they might sign me. And that's exactly what happened. So long story short, they finally signed me. And again, Scott Sisson was the guy that they thought it was going to be the guy. They had another younger guy that didn't do real well in their first minicamp, but they signed me. And on top of that, they gave me a $5,000 bonus. Okay. I was about to have a baby boy, Mason, my boy, who's now 30. He was about to be born. And so the money was, I was rich, $5,000, man. I got a kid coming along and about to be born, and I need some money now. We need some money. My girlfriend at the time, we got engaged, got married, my high school sweetheart. So we were married for 17 years. But my point is really that, they gave me an opportunity to play and some money on top of that, which I thought was super cool. So I go in and I stayed there in Jacksonville because we had a mini camp that Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I believe. And again, I met the whole team. I met, Coughlin, met everybody, met, Scott Sisson, and really cool mini camp. And I kicked pretty well. We're neck and neck. Okay. So fast forward into training camp, we go up into Stevens Point, Wisconsin, of all places, as our first training camp. I don't know why they chose that place, but there was a heat thing going on and a lot of people were having a lot of heat issues. Apparently it was a very, very hot summer up there. Well, we were doing training camp in one of the hottest times of Wisconsin's, lifetime. It was crazy, but guys falling out, needing IVs, cramping up, all that stuff. It was memorable. But I eventually, we had 5 preseason games as well, and again, side note, I played in the Hall of Fame game with the Chargers in '94. I played in the Hall of Fame game with the Jaguars in '95. So, and the year before '94, my Idaho Vandals went into Youngstown State to play them. Youngstown, Ohio, of course, is pretty close to Canton, Ohio. John L. Smith took the team to the Hall of Fame. So 3 years in a row, I visited the Hall of Fame and I was there. Super cool. Anyway, so fast forward, going into, the Jaguar season, getting into the training camp, Scott and I were neck and neck, right? We went through all 5 games, right? And so at the very last game, Scott misses an extra point. He kicked a game winner a couple of games prior to that in Miami, and it was my turn to kick because we rotated kicks. And our special teams coach, we want this victory. We need the victory. Let Scott kick this, whatever. Well, Scott barely made the kick. I'm not going into that. Scott's a great guy. I don't ever want to cut him down, clearly. So fast forward to the last game, Scott misses an extra point. Back then it was from the 20, so it was a very short field goal, essentially. And that next morning, that was the final cut day. And so we're all sitting in the locker room, and we call him the Grim Reaper. His name was Ron Hill. He was our player personnel guy. He would come through the locker room and tell the guys who needed to be told to go see coach and bring your playbook. That was code for your cut. Well, I'm sitting next to Scott, great guy, because we told each other, good job. Whoever wins this, we both put it in, did our best, and I think he might have thought he might have an edge because he did. He was a veteran. He had some experience over me, of course. I'm a young rookie, short guy, whatever. But I think I let my kicking do the speaking for me. And ultimately what happened was he came through, and Jimmy Smith was sitting right next to me too. So it was like the 3 or 4 of us. There was maybe another guy or two there. And Jimmy can tell you the story. If you guys know who Jimmy Smith is, he should be in the Hall of Fame, one of our best receivers ever. I think he's still our all-time receiver here in Jacksonville. But Ron Hill comes and points to Scott and says, hey, get your playbook and go see Coach Coughlin. And at that point, I knew it. And so my point in all of this, I was excited for like 10 seconds. Okay. So here's the competitiveness in me. Okay. So here I am. I just realized that I've actually finally made an opening season roster. Like, this is incredible. I made an NFL team. And once you do that, your name's kind of out there for real now. Like, teams take you serious now. Like, wow, that short guy is actually must be pretty good because the Jaguars kept him. Okay. So at that point, I was excited for like 10 seconds. Right. So I'm thinking, okay, well, after 10 seconds, I'm like stoked. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do now? Like, cause my challenge of getting to the highest level of football, I guess after a while, I'm thinking I could, which I did. But at that point, I'm thinking to myself, the challenge of me making the NFL is now I've succeeded. I've completed this challenge. Now what? Well, I immediately told myself, well, I got to get better. I got to, I can't just like coast and, I made the team. I can chill out and relax now. No. I need to get better to hold on to this position, to still prove to them that I can do this job. And so that's what happened. So I made myself better. I just really, really focused on what I needed to do and knew that this was an opportunity of a lifetime. And my first year wasn't the greatest. I was like 20 of 27 or something. I missed like 7 field goals. Wasn't the greatest, but fortunately, they kept me for the next year, and I did really good that next year. And the rest is history, of course. Went to a Pro Bowl my 3rd year in the NFL, led the league in scoring that same year as well. But I say all this just to remind you, essentially, that we are a lot more powerful than we think. And when you think about being resilient and just having relentless attitude towards your goals and your dreams and your passion, and just be very persistent, because I knew what my capabilities were. And for people to say no to me because of something else, not my abilities, but something else, I didn't go well with me. I didn't like that. That was not something that is fair, clearly, but they don't know my mindset. They don't know how persistent I am. So again, how many no's and how many hurdles and hoops and everything like that I've gone through up to this point, I knew that I'm like, man, I've conquered a lot of stuff. I can deal with this. Yeah, a lot of pressure. I get it, but the message I'm leaving you today with is the fact that we have a lot more abilities than we think. Okay. And again, I've talked about this in previous shows, where you'll never know unless you try, unless you give it an opportunity. And so my biggest thing, I've told you this before, is I wanted to be the best kicker that I possibly could be, that my body would allow. I'm not a big, strong, freakishly athletic guy, but I was able to play in the NFL, right? Well, I wanted to be as good as I possibly could. And whatever level that got me to, I had to be okay with, because I knew that my body, my lack of athletic ability, which is an honest to God truth, um, it could only, I could only, I don't have any more to offer. That's my point. Is like, I got to be as good as I can be. I have to be okay with, as long as I did the right things and studied the right process, which I was taught by Jim, to do the form that I've been using and teach to this day for almost 20 years now. I've used. Okay, so that's really where my goals were, is to be the best I could whatever my body could handle and whatever I could physically do, I had to be okay with. And that was satisfying to me that I was able to get to the NFL at that point. And the persistence and the hard work and the lack of caring about the no's, I didn't give the no's much effort. I didn't even care that I heard no. It actually fueled my fire. And I think you can all understand, it made me a better player, because you're going to tell me no, I'm going to prove you wrong. Like all these colleges that overlooked me, even Mike Price even said at one point, I think a reporter asked him, because University of Idaho is only 8 miles away from Pullman, Washington, which is where Washington State University is. So they knew, Mike Price knew who I was, because he'd seen Idaho football being just right next door. He was watching, he saw it. And I think a reporter asked him, and he said, yeah, he's really good kicker, man. I wish he would have possibly come to it. Of course, I tried, but y'all had other plans. So I had to prove you wrong too. So my point is, honestly, that, you guys understand that you are much more capable of what you think you are. It's just a matter of finding that passion deep inside you and moving forward with it and enjoying it. You have to enjoy what you're doing. And of course, it was a challenge to me to be as good as I could be. I wasn't competing against anybody but myself. Even when I was in the NFL, I was not competing against anybody. Every year I was in the NFL, I had to compete against another kicker, but I didn't look at it that way. Yeah, that guy's good. Well, I got to be better then. But I didn't change what I did. I didn't change the way I thought. I just kicked the ball. I knew that I was good enough to play and beat this guy out. And I might have had a contract or whatever after my third year. I had a four-year deal. So there was some security there, but I still got to perform, clearly. So just know that, with that being said, that you're going to experience a lot of stuff in your life, and especially if you're a competitor, when someone says no, or they challenge you with something, in all different varieties of ways that they can challenge you. They can challenge you right to your face. They could say you suck, whatever they can challenge you. So, just kind of like in a little mental way where they, say, really, they can just sugarcoat things. But I take that as a challenge. Like, you're going to sugarcoat it because you don't think I can actually do it. Okay. Just check off my list that I'm going to prove you wrong too. And I loved it. It fueled my fire, and I ran with it. Okay. So just understand, again, I say all this stuff out of total humility, in saying that I am not anybody special. I am not a big, freakishly strong, gifted athlete. I was never. I told you, I barely played varsity soccer. I was never the fastest guy on the team, clearly. But when it came to football and learning how to kick a football, I got really good at it. And that's really what kept me going. I challenged myself on a daily basis to make myself better, just to see, kind of like, I was curious. I want to see, and I loved it so much that was another reason why I just was like, man, I gotta see where I can go with this. And so that's really one of the biggest things that pushed me forward, is just that the ability to take all those people that had doubt in me and to prove them wrong by making it to the next level. And I succeeded in that. And so my message to you, obviously I've repeated it again, but just understand that you are very much more capable of what you think you are. You just have to, take the risk, and, we are all going to fail. There's always going to be failure, but, take those failures as opportunities to learn and get better at what it is that you're doing. So with that said, there's no football tonight, but Super Bowl's coming up in a couple weeks. So enjoy these next couple weeks before that big game, and love you all, and hope you guys have an amazing Monday night, and we'll see you next Monday night at 5:30 on Zealous Wellness with Mike Hollis. Take care.